It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 220, entitled, Do You Have a Chicken Baster? It was recorded on Monday the 15th of August 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and as always I'm joined by several lovely guests, 3 this week. I'm joined by Jess Frick and Cameron Jones, as well as Christian Raber. It's a WordPress show, so what are we going to talk about? Well, WordPress, and as always there's quite a lot of news. There's a WP drama this week. It all started when Matt Mullenweg left a comment about some new design for the WordPress.org homepage. We talk about that extensively, and then we talk about the new 2023 default theme and how it differs dramatically from anything that you've seen before. Fluid typography is coming to Gutenberg 13.8, and we see how that might be implemented. WordCamp US is around the corner, and the speaker list has been announced. We also get into the subject of the new integration between Main WP and Atarim. If you own either of those, that could be quite interesting for you. There's a very short little bit about North Commerce, and also about the fact that we did a podcast episode number 290 this week with Ritis Chevalis over at Visual Composer. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Hello. Good afternoon, welcome, good morning if you're in the United States, good afternoon if you're in Europe, and good evening if you are Cameron in Australia. I just tried to do an Australian accent. It was really bad.
I'm going to leave now.
Myself. Oh dear. It's This Week in WordPress. Pleasure to have you back. We've been having a week off. I went on holiday. I went to Wales, and it was really hot, and swam in the sea, and it was really hot, and it was all lovely. And now I'm back, and I'm ready to talk about WordPress again. And I'm joined by 3 fabulous guests. First of all, down there, we've got Jess Frick from Pressable. How are you doing, Jess?
I'm great, Nathan. I'm so glad you're back.
Oh, thank you. I'm well, I don't know what's the correct way to answer that.
I was going to say, like, when you go on vacation, I'm glad I'm back, but not really.
When you go on vacation, does your mind just flood with interesting things to do? Because mine really does. I guess I just put the brakes on to like the normal thought processes, and I just kind of fill up with ideas, and then I come back home and they immediately get drained away and come to naught.
I think it comes down to is it a trip or is it a vacation?
Okay. Yeah.
You know, trips, not so much. Vacations, absolutely.
Vacation it was, and all the good ideas have gone. Anyway, this is Jessica Frick. She's the Director of Operations for Pressable. We'll be talking more about them later. She's an iced tea connoisseur and a proud member of the post status community. So welcome back, one of our co-hosts. She's here all the time. Cameron Jones is making another return. He's been on here several times, one of which was slightly less successful than the others because all the equipment broke down, but he's here today. He's actually going to be featuring on the show later because he's written a really thought-provoking article. How are you doing, Cameron?
Oh, I'm a little sleepy, considering it's late in the evening.
Yes. How late in the evening?
It's 10:30
p.m. Oh, yeah, it's late.
Not too bad.
I'm not able to talk at 10:30 in the evening. I'll be tucked away in bed at that time. So thank you for joining us. Cameron Jones is a professional WordPress developer from the little beach town of Victor Harbor, which is in Australia, as we've just said. He's the founder of the premium plugin store Mongoose Marketplace, best known for Mongoose Page plugin, which is used by more than 30,000 WordPress websites. He's also the maintainer of the official WordPress plugin for the free donation platform Ko-fi. Cameron also has contributed patches to several popular plugins such as ACF and Jetpack, as well as having spent nearly a decade building sites with and products for WordPress. He's also spent time as a meetup and WordCamp organizer, and also contributed to Core But when he's away from the laptop, you can find Cameron on the sports field, at a dance class, or in the mosh pit at a heavy metal concert. I got to ask, because some of those seem like interesting combinations. Tell me first about the sport. What's the sport or sports?
Usually it's cricket during the summer and Aussie rules football during the winter. And I've also been playing baseball this winter, so that's been fun.
Yeah, and the dancing?
Finals is coming up in 2 weeks. So.
Oh, good luck. And what about the dancing? What kind of moves are you into?
I do line dancing, country boot scooting.
That's such an interesting combination. Yeah. Jess and Christian, have you ever seen Aussie rules football?
No.
In the UK, No. In the UK, we call it Aussie no rules football because it's the most mental sport you've ever seen. It's honestly like as soon as if you watch it for the first time, I guarantee. How can they do? Like they can kick it, they can throw it, they can chuck it. It's just such the most amazing sport, and it's on a pitch the size of a cricket field, so it's massive. And the judges
hold on. Just want to make sure I get this right. So this is soccer, right? You call soccer Europeans?
No.
So it's something like rugby.
Yes, a bit on a cricket pitch.
Okay.
It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. It's well worth watching. But it's line dancing.
It's probably closest to Gaelic football. Is probably the closest sport to it.
Yeah.
That's not it, but you mash a bunch of sports together, and you get Aussie rules.
Yeah, the only thing it doesn't have, I think, is like darts. If it had darts in it, it'd be truly interesting. I think
kind of do, because if you get it through the different goalposts, you get different scores. So.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, well worth watching Aussie rules football. Sorry, I'm not mocking. I genuinely remember the first time I saw it, thinking, "What?" And then getting really into it. It was on the BBC, no, Channel 4, our Channel 4 for years when I was a kid. And then it had a real cult following.
And it really hasn't reached this spot of the world, honestly. Like we've got soccer, we've got rugby, which is really violent, especially back in Romania. It's really, really violent, extremely violent, I'd say. But otherwise, I think we don't watch a lot of international sports, like maybe these, seems like a very localized type of sport. It's very popular, maybe in Australia, right?
Yeah.
I guess we just don't watch those. No.
Well, you're hearing the voice of Christian Raber, who is joining us this week. He's been on before, but Christian is the owner at WP Chill, which you can see next to his name. He's a blogger occasionally at christianr.io, and he's been working with WordPress for over 10 years and has built or acquired a collection of plugins that are being used on over 500,000 active websites, all managed by a remote team. He loves talking about anything business, WordPress, investments, and product management any time of the day. Christian's best-known plugins are Modular Image Gallery, Strong Testimonials, and lastly, Download Monitor. How are you doing, Christian? You all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just can't wait to get to this part where we have to wave our hands. Like that's my favorite.
Oh, this is the best bit.
This is the only reason why I'm doing it. Yeah, no, we have to keep doing it. Like, could you imagine a show where you have something that shows up like a red light and everyone has to go crazy like this while you're talking, right? And you have to focus on doing this with your hands, but also talking.
I don't even know how that whole thing started. I think we accidentally did it one time, and then it just became kind of like the thing, and it's now the thing that we do.
Oh, so this was an accident. I thought.
Yes, more or less, as most good things are. We're going to talk about WordPress at some point, but just before we do, a few things to say. First of all, if you are joining us, firstly, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. If you'd like to share this stream, I'd really appreciate that. It's nice to have an audience, especially if they come into the comments and give some comments. wpbuilds.com/live is the best place to do that. That is a YouTube embed. And because of that, you need to be logged into YouTube if you want to make comments. The other option is to go to our Facebook group or Facebook page. And if you want to be de-anonymized, Facebook require you to go to the following URL, chat.restream.io/FB. And then you can click a button, which then allows us to see your avatar and name. Otherwise, you just come through as an anonymous user, which is fine if you want to do it that way, just like Jess just did. Was that on purpose or was that an accident? You just avatared yourself at the exact moment I was avataring.
It was so perfect, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was good. That was like almost like we planned it. Oh goodness, there's quite a few comments. Let's get through a few of these because it's nice to say hello to people, isn't it? Hello, Rob Cairns, joining us once more. Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Medium WordPress Mafia. I don't know what you mean. But thank you for joining us, Madeline. That's really nice. We've got a Facebook user here. This is what it looks like if you don't click the link. You just come through as Facebook user. But whoever you are, we're glad to have you. Peter Ingersoll joining us once again. Good morning from Connecticut, he says. And Picha Neri. Hi, everyone. I am Billy No Mates working on the 15th of August when nobody works in Europe. What? Why does nobody work in Europe on that day, Peach? I genuinely don't know. That's not me being ignorant. I have no idea. Is it like
It's actually a huge holiday right now, which is Saint Mary, and it's both for Orthodox and Catholics as well.
Right.
So,
okay. I guess Henry VIII got rid of all that back in the Middle Ages for us, and now we don't have a clue about that particular holiday. But okay, this person's going to go on YouTube, and then it's just a bunch of people saying hello to each other. There you go. You're right, Christian, because it's a Virgin Mary related saint thing. Beautifully described. We'll go with that. Right, we're going to talk about WordPress, but before we do, I'll just share my screen. This is us, WP Build's website. If you fancy subscribing to the stuff that we do, there's a button here. It's labeled subscribe rather cryptically. And if you click on that, you'll get to a page with all sorts of options to fill out forms and get on our mailing list and so on. So feel free to do that. I really appreciate it. That would be nice. But let's start. Do you know what we need? What we need, apart from the hand waving, I need a little jingle that I can play when there's a WP drama piece, right? When it's the weekly WP drama, I need some sort of or a cowbell or something like that. Just something that I can strike.
I know what you need, actually. It's the badums sound.
A what?
You don't know that sound. It's pretty popular. It was it was a meme at some point.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
It's like the sound it makes when you hit the drums, right? It's
like
a short hit.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Well, unfortunately, this platform doesn't have that capability, but I kind of feel next time, I don't know, or I wear a Viking hat or something like that during the no way, Jess has just disappeared. as if that happens. Jess has got a Viking. Right, okay. So the theme of today's show is to try and find things that Jess has got in her room. She's whipped out a tiara. So, okay. So let's get to this story. So this is a piece, and honestly, we're not even going to really dwell on the piece itself, which is kind of a shame in a way. We're going to talk about the WP drama side of things. This was a piece by Tellyworth on WordPress, make.wordpress.org. And it is called Developing the Redesigned Home and Download Pages. And in this piece, Tellyworth paints a picture of what's been going on over the last few days, or month, I should say, more like 33 days, in terms of getting this website designed and scoped out and getting people to cast their eyes over it and see what they think, and really doing the typical job that you might do on make.wordpress.org to sort of flesh out exactly what's been happening and who's involved and so on. And then, as is so often the case, it's the comments that cause the fuss. You can see that the first comment was from Matt Mullenweg, who on August the 9th wrote, "This is not a good use of time, nor does it further the actual goals of a new homepage or download page, and we have better places to spend our development time." Now, as you
That's
may
the
imagine,
exact same phrase that one of us working with Gutenberg should use. We have better places to spend our time.
Well, you can imagine the comments. I mean, there were basically some people that came back and sort of how to describe it. They thought that this was a little bit incendiary and a little bit ill-judged. Tellyworth came back in and spelled out exactly in actually a really great length why they thought that this was not a particular waste of time and so on and so forth. And then Matt came back in and sort of said, yes, it doesn't feel like 33 days is particularly quick for me, and kind of implied that maybe it would be better to use some different tooling if things needed to move more quickly. Now, this obviously went off in Twitter, and there was an awful lot of people saying things like, look, hang on a minute, is Matt saying that we would be better to use alternative tools than the block editor if it's going to be quicker and so forth. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to sort of cogitate on this, to dwell on it, or what your thoughts are. And we'll get on to Cameron's thoughts with his article. But maybe I'll start with you, Cameron. What's been your takeaway from this?
Well, firstly, I wrote my article before I saw these comments, so they're not exactly directly related. I know Tellyworth personally, not particularly well, but he has been the official photographer at most, if not all, WordCamps in Australia, which, so, make of that what you will. And so, perhaps I'm, have some bias from knowing them personally, but it was probably not the wisest comment to make. And, some of the points that Matt raises in his longer follow-up comments, saying like, well, have we, considered, the comparing, the caching avenues and that sort of thing. It's like people were asking these sorts of questions 5 years ago and were practically ignored when it came to like how Gutenberg was being developed in the first place. But now they only matter now that it's being put on their own site. And if for whatever reason Gutenberg isn't good enough for being used on WordPress.org itself, what does that say about this whole project?
Yeah, and that feels to me like the bit which people got it. I think you encapsulated it really well there. If it's not fit for being used in a swift way on the .org website, then what is the use case for it if not there? Maybe for a bit of context, I'll just read Matt's reply if that's okay with everybody. It's fairly lengthy, but it might give more context to the conversation. It says 33 days since project kickoff doesn't feel quick to me, but I think it's worth diving deeper into not trying to turn Figma designs into themes quickly. But are we solving the right problem in the first place? What would you say are the actual goals of a new homepage or a download page, and how could you have all that development time going forwards? I would guess we want more people converting to the key actions on the .org website. And then he talks about A/B testing and things like Optimizely and so on and so forth, and using PHP and include files. Then he goes on to say, and I'm following the second paragraph here, you could imagine a world where instead of taking more than a month to launch a single design, which implies a maximum rate of under 12 of these could be done in a year. So we make 20 to 30 designs up front, ideally with a different approach and copy, and focus our development time on measuring the success. Blah, de, blah, de, blah. So I won't carry on reading. I'll just sort of pause there. I think I've got the tenor of it there. So Jess, what have been the bits and pieces that you've picked up on Twitter or elsewhere about this? Have you had any thoughts on this personally, or seen the Twitter storm that developed?
Well, I just would like to say it does seem that whenever something like this happens, I end up co-hosting that week.
It's designed, Jess. It's very much planned.
So Pressable being owned by Automatic, I think I do have a little bit of a different perspective here. And at risk of sounding like an apologist, I read the comments differently than other people. It looks to me like honest feedback. And sometimes we don't like feedback. I think had I written this in response to it, people would be responding differently. But because it's Matt, they're, understandably responding in a different way. But, people were pushing back later in the thread, and they're going to proceed. A later comment was made that the time for questions and feedback had already passed. This kicked off some time ago. But the question, the probing question to, is this really going to accomplish our goals? Are we answering the right question? I will say that, those are questions that are hard to hear in a positive way in the moment sometimes, because you don't know for sure if you are answering that question. And then I think there's like an instinct inside of us, and we're like, yes, of course we're doing it right. But I think that part of what I've learned, over years has been that it's best for me to stop in that moment and ask, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Now, I obviously have not taken the time to read what the goals of the homepage and the download page redesign were. So I can't speak as to whether it actually does match that. But I do think that we get kind of pearl clutchy whenever Matt says something that makes us uncomfortable.
You're going to have to explain that phrase to me. What does pearl clutchy mean?
Clutching our pearls. Oh, he said something and it sounded rude.
Okay. Right. So basically, you're saying there's an element of... So as an example, if I had written that exact comment, nobody would have possibly even replied because it's me and not Matt. Whereas the fact that Matt had said it, there's an element of posturing and, as you described it, pearl clutching that goes on because we don't like to hear anything from that source that's controversial or opinionated.
Well, and admittedly, I think there have been some things that have happened in recent months that have people kind of knee-jerky whenever he says something.
Right.
And so I think there's some element of that. But at the same time, he is the head of, this project. And so rightly so, his words are given a little more weight. I think, though, he does ask some important questions. And the answer is, I don't know the answer. But I see it a little differently this time.
That's interesting as well, because let's say that the WordPress project was a for-profit corporation with shareholders and all of that. I guess Matt would be just doing this in a boardroom and, telling people off and saying, look, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it this way because this is the way I want it done. And in this scenario, that's not the way it's done. So it's all done out in the open. And I guess to expect anybody to tread on eggshells all the time, permanently 365 days of the year and not give an opinion would be a little bit unreasonable. So that's an interesting angle on it, Jess, and an important one. So he's raising questions that needed to be asked, and ask it. But also interesting that you said that he was shot down in a sense as well, because the process had been gone through, the time had elapsed for him to make comments that were going to, incisively change the way it was going to be done. So it led its course, and probably it's WP drama of this week and not next week.
I saw Daniel just popped in, and I was actually thinking about his tweets on the matter.
Daniel, I do want your opinion on this, actually. So this is Daniel Schultz-Smith, who's just come into the comments, because I think Daniel's got a very different opinion to you, Jess, in that I think he thinks that that this kind of thing is not the way that you're going to encourage. Let me try and encapsulate Dan's thoughts. Sorry, Dan, to put words into your mouth. I think your tweet implied if you want new, fresh blood into WordPress, a surefire way to stifle that from happening would be for the team at the top, if you like, for want of a better word, to be having a go at the people who are volunteering their time. And that's where this gets really tricky as well, isn't it? It's the whole volunteer bit. And as soon as the volunteer bit comes in, everybody starts to say, well, we're largely just volunteers. Christian, I know that we've locked you out of this conversation thus far, and I don't want to, so can we hand it over to you?
Yeah, sure. I forgot that Jessica works for Pressable, which is, an automatic owned company. So now I have to rethink my sentences around this.
Oh, no.
No, so don't get me wrong. So the way I've seen it from the outside and the way I've looked at it was like, this has happened to me as well. Whenever I've handed down ownership of a project or leadership without being very specific and strict about the guidelines, rules, timelines, and everything like that. And then I came back, let's say 33 days, and took a look at where the project currently is. I was unhappy. Like in my mind, I had very different expectations of that project. So what I think we're seeing right now is Matt imagined something, then he came in and looked at what's happening. He was like, what the heck's going on? Like, you're taking way too much to do this. One of the other issue I think that's coming up from this from those phrases and sentences is he realizes that it's far easier to iterate over a design in pure HTML and PHP, test it, A/B test it, figure out which version is the best one, and then move on to implementing that one into Gutenberg. And people just flock to this and they're like, holy shit, you finally understand our issues with Gutenberg and how difficult it is to iterate. And everyone jumped at that and was like, yeah, you finally get it. You finally took a look at it. You finally realize how long it takes to put something out there live. And you're finally understanding our pains. Now, probably he hasn't, put himself into the shoes of a day-to-day developer that has to do this for clients day in and day out with all the Gutenberg changes out there. And I'm not blaming him for that because he has so many things to manage, right? This is like it's impossible to ask him to do everything. But just people saw an opportunity and took it, right? I think it's the classic example of how loosely managed automatic is, and that's part, by design, by choice. It also encourages a lot of creative work, but it also can stammer, progress, really fast progress, because it'll take your time without any strict deadlines. And so I agree with Jessica's point. Like, I see it differently than other people, but I do see the pain points as well that he's now experiencing himself without probably ever thinking about him, and was probably caught off guard. Like, when he thought about that sentences and typed it up, I don't think he realized the impact it's going to have and how well that will resonate with the audience, and how they're going to pick at it and tear it apart like sentence by sentence and go like, yeah, this is our problems. We've been crying about this for 5 years plus.
Yeah, that's an interesting point in that his words really do get dissected, don't they? Like, really dissected for the tiniest nuance.
But they had like a lot of nuance, right? That like
Yes.
all that entire phrase, like it was a long phrase, had a lot of meaning to it. Like it painted the bigger picture. Like you could see the entire workflow. Like, do this in HTML, use Optimizely, A/B test, which we all know takes a few months, and do all of these one after the other. And in the end, you'll have your winning version, and then you can move into Gutenberg. Like, anyone who's ever done this process knows how painful it can be, right? Especially with Gutenberg, making breaking changes almost every 3 to 6 months. And everyone saw that process and then started picking at all the small problems along that process. And, finally they could resonate with what Matt said, and that pent up, frustration that's been accumulated in all these years. Like, no one's hearing our voices now. Finally, Matt's hearing it. Let's let him have it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's get the barrels out. Okay, let's Daniel, thank you for posting some longer comments that we can read out and give your opinion. So Daniel says, and by the way, this is in one of his tweets. One of Daniel's tweets was mentioned in the article, which we may or may not, I can't remember if it comes up later, but it was mentioned in an article as an important talking point around this story. Daniel says, an issue to me was that the critical feedback in public from a leader has a critical bias that is not there as a peer. My suggestion was that Matt should lead with empathy and emotional intelligence rather than popping in every now and again and then dropping bombs. Okay. And he carries on. Christian mentions a great point. It finally showed Matt how difficult the Gutenberg actually is for some designs. And I'm just going to miss out Peter's comment and go to Daniel's final one. Matt's word carry the most weight of anyone in WordPress, and he needs to be aware of how he talks to people, or it's going to discourage people from even joining. Yeah, that was the bit of your comment that I remembered, the way that if you alienate, then that's going to discourage people in the future. And then Peter's saying, great points about the hit and run type messaging. Making himself a lightning rod is at the very least a distraction. It doesn't help. Yeah, it's curious as well, isn't it? Because it's not like a tweet.
I want to make a point here. So if you can just circle back for like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. The hit and run type of messaging is something that I personally understand, because when you're extremely busy and you try to make time in your schedule for every single thing, like everything is important, like everyone wants your opinion and values your opinion and puts a lot of weight on your words. There's no way you can be everywhere, right? But you do realize that your input is important, so you try to give it and be as constructive and as succinct as possible with the allocated time you have. Just imagine this for a second. You've been, working nonstop for 8 hours, and you've got 5 minutes to read this piece, see exactly where it's going, what the project is, and you've got 5 minutes to express your thoughts as clearly and concisely as possible, and leave the people to digest all the information you've just expressed, as well as let them act on it, right? It takes time. It's not necessarily hit and run. It's like, I did the best I could with the time I had. Don't be so judgy about it, because I can't spend time here, right? But it's easy. Like, if he steps in right now, if he steps into this live call we're having right now, delegating proper, yeah, sure, that makes sense. But at the same time, you're not going to weigh other people's words as heavy as you weigh Matt's. So, he's still trying to get involved in the community and make sure he's part of the community. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the best approach, but I think it's better than saying nothing and never being, at least trying to show people he's reading the same sources as us and seeing the same information as us.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Because I think that's extremely important for the community to realize he's actually trying. He's putting in a lot of effort. I mean, I don't disagree with that. Don't get me wrong. And I think sometimes employees should be rattled. Probably if Nathan could put up this comment on the screen right now. Yeah, sometimes I think they need rattling. Heavily opinionated here, but when you take 33 days to push out a design that's just a design without any, clear objectives, you should really think why you did that. If it's just graphical, maybe it makes no sense. Just sorry for the long rant about it. But,
it's okay. It's an interesting point. A couple of things come out of that for me. The first thing is, yes, the fact that this is an official WordPress channel, as opposed to like a tweet or something, where you just drop some kind of incendiary bomb and wander off. It is indicative, it is in the right place, and it is opinionated, which is, I guess, what comments kind of ought to be. There was no hint in that for me of, of being inflammatory or abusive, but I think some people took it as more kind of unhelpful and what have you. And I've got to have a little bit of empathy for anybody, I suppose, and it wouldn't just be Matt Mullenweg; it would be kind of anybody whose words are under the microscope in that way. I personally, I would really find that aspect of life really difficult if I knew that every single thing that I said was going to be dissected from every angle by
and you still kept
millions of people.
You still kept at it, right? And you still kept doing it, even though the entire community, like, every time judges you. And
let's just put up sorry, Jess, you carry on, and I'll put up the comments
just one quick thing to Daniel's point, and he's right. We all want him and the project to be successful for years. It's the delivery that needs tweaking. I just want to point out, nobody talks about the times that Matt comments and it's not WP drama. I think most of the time when he is working, it's not newsworthy because it's not, as I said earlier, pro clutchy.
That would be quite interesting,
right?
Actually. It would be quite an interesting. I mean, nobody's going to do this work, but it would be quite interesting to see if you took Photomat's Twitter stream and all of the comments that he's made. Let's say WordPress, make.wordpress.org. It would be interesting to see how many of them were a cause of drama. I suppose the counter argument to that is, well, if you are in that position, you've got to be very, very mindful that anything could be read in any which way.
Of course. And Lord knows I have tasted at least 7 or 8 pairs of my shoes in the last 2 years. Who among us hasn't said something truly regrettable in a public forum?
It's easy to do that, actually. Yeah. So if you don't hide behind a communications team, like a PR team that thinks about these kinds of things and tries to, and you've seen how sterile those types of messages are. Like, they're sentences that barely say anything. And most CEOs of huge companies hide behind those companies and just stick to a script, right? You rarely see those unscripted chats. Oh, Matt's stepping out and going unscripted here and saying his thoughts. And people are like, no, we hate your ideas. We want you more involved. Right. That's still right. Still feedback, not necessarily valuable or actionable. And I get why the frustration, but we have to realize he's just one guy. He's never going to be able to split himself across so many different aspects of the business. There's a lot to do with a business that size, insane amount.
Well, that's the front side, the not profit side. Remember, he's got the whole profit side too.
Oh yeah. And
Daniel
always
saying,
thinking about the future and being challenged, by huge competition. It's the time it took.
Daniel saying he's questioning the time it took. Do you mean the time it took for the 33 days, or do you mean the time
the 33 days?
Yeah. Time. Okay, here we go. He follows up. Time it takes for developing or designing is subjective, based on other commitments, skill level, etc. Yeah, and also the nature of the way that things are done in the WordPress community, aren't they? It's not like, okay, here's 6 people deployed in a company who are on full-time payroll, and we can tell them exactly what to do and deploy them however we like. And we expect everything to be done in 8.5 hours or whatever it may be. It's a very different thing, and I confess, Jess, I'd missed the bit at the end where they said that the conversation was locked out anyway because the time was up and all of the usual processes had been gone through. So that is the WP drama for this week. Well, kind of, because we got Cameron here, and Cameron's getting us back into a subject which we covered a few weeks ago, and I think it's an important subject to carry on, if that's all right. I'm not entirely sure that we dealt with it in the perfect way.
Here, hang on, let me get ready for Cameron's.
Okay, there we go.
There we
right.
go. There we
I think
go.
what you need. No, I'm not sure it's ready. I don't think we need the full-blown Viking hat this time. I think the tiara would be satisfactory.
The tiara?
Yeah, go for the tiara. It's not quite the trouble. Look, the size of the head object is directly proportional to the nature of the drama. So I want to introduce you to Cameron's blog. It's CameronJonesWeb.com.au. CameronJonesWeb.com.au. I will try to put the link on the screen in just a minute. I failed to make a little piece of text for that. And Cameron's taken his pen to paper this week with a post entitled "Why I'm Not Sold on 5 for the Future." Normally it's me explaining these articles. That would be ridiculous in this particular case. So Cameron, all I'll say is 5 for the future is the idea that companies, individuals, give 5% of their, I'm going to use the word resources, because I don't know how that word, it could be time, it could be, it could be all sorts of things, but that's what it is. And you're not sold on it. Tell us why.
Well, funnily enough, I wrote a 2,000-word blog piece. Why? So go read that. Well, there's a variety of different reasons. The influence that Automatic has on the project, and the whole murky waters between who is really running the show. Just how 5% is actually quantified. And Rob Howard from Master WP had a really good analysis on the toxic scorekeeping elements of keeping track of hours and comparing them. Like we saw, it was weaponized in the whole GoDaddy tweet storm. There's several reasons, unfortunately. Read the blog post.
Do you think, though, that, essentially you're having read it, there's quite a lot in there, but first of all, let's tackle the thing about what this bit here. What is a contribution at the moment? So for example, does this count?
No.
Does this? No, okay, let me reword that. Should this count? No, let me reword that again. Let me go back to the beginning. Let's go through all the things which do count. So at the minute, we've got basically putting in time to developing into core. Is that where it ends? Is that where your 5% can go?
It's a bit more than that. It's, to my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, it's contributing to a make team. So that does usually tends to involve writing code for WordPress core. It can involve other things like WordPress.org is running things like diverse speaker training and that sort of thing, and that's coming under one of the make teams and that sort of thing. So that's obviously not writing code for core at all, and that's would count towards it. And, marketing, like the new homepage and download page and whatever, whoever's designing that, if they're being sponsored, that would come under that because it's contributing to a make team. But then, there's obviously a lot of things that don't count that, aren't, make team contributions.
And it feels to me from the article, we've got it on the screen at the moment, but we'll read out some other things. Do you think it would be a good idea to broaden the scope of that so that the net is cast wider? So basically, if it's anything to do with WordPress, the promotion of WordPress, the creation of new things in WordPress, anything that promotes WordPress, that ought to come under the umbrella, and therefore a new definition of what that 5% is.
Not necessarily. Like, I think it can be broadened a little bit, but I do think that more or less it is, the right things are being counted and the wrong ones aren't. Like this podcast doesn't count.
I'm going to leave
and
now.
It probably shouldn't.
I'm
but
going.
It
I'm just going to go off to the side
where my main grief comes with it in terms of what counts, especially, is there is this attitude that if you're not contributing to Five for the Future, to the things that count, you're not doing real contributions.
Right.
Whereas, I think this podcast is a very valuable contribution to the community. I don't necessarily think it should count towards Five for the Future, but it shouldn't be disrespected and disregarded in the way that I feel the current rhetoric around Five for the Future is doing so. Calling people free riders because they're not participating in the Five for the Future program and calling them a parasitic existential threat to the project because they're not contributing enough hours, according to your opinion. It's, GoDaddy sponsors this podcast. They sponsor other podcasts, they sponsor events and stuff. But, it was only, there's 9,000 employees and they're only doing 200 hours or whatever it was. Not that it should count towards it. But it should be at least acknowledged.
On a 5-star rating system, if 5-star was the top, and 5 for the future, I think WP Builds sits firmly in the 1 for the future. The 1
it's quite
star.
generous.
I think so. All right, half. Can we go with half, Cameron? Half for the future. The 0.5 for the future.
If you manage to post this on Twitter.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
You can go for a full star.
Right. But it is really interesting because there are an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of things, and much of it thankless, much of it obviously coming under the umbrella that Cameron's just described. It goes channels in directly to a make team, therefore it counts. But a lot of people doing a lot of other things. So you've just mentioned sponsorship, things like the sponsorship of this podcast itself, the fact that you three are on it, giving up your time in order to, help spread the word and in some way help the WordPress ecosystem. None of that counts. And as you say, Cameron, perhaps rightly so, but maybe the net does need to be cast a little bit wider. Let's throw it open to Jess and Christian, see what they think.
Oh my God.
That's all.
It's the first time I'm meeting Cameron and I haven't read the post. I know what the Five for the Future program is. I know as a plugin shop owner what frustrates me about it, because they said like the people who are contributing the most to the Five for the Future program are going to get first access into WordPress.com plugin store that's been announced for like a year or so by now. They're going to get beta invites into that program, and I'm obviously not one of those people, right? But I think the sentence that if you're contributing to any other activity than the ones listed here, you're not making real contributions, was spun off into a meaning I wouldn't attribute to. So personally, I wouldn't say you're not contributing at all. It's not reading that sentence. It's not what I understand. It's not, you're not helping the product move into the direction we want to move, because so how I see it, we have a lot of challenges on our plate with, out of all the huge list of places where you could contribute, we've already hired people and put people into places and frameworks and processes and whatnots. But these are the areas where we still need help. And we think that even people with no experience could get involved and actually make an impact and have their and see their work put live. So, for example, I think I've opened 2 tickets 8 years ago on track. They're still there. No one worked
No
on
one's
it, right?
surprised.
Cameron feels your
Right?
pain.
Yeah, of course. So don't get me wrong. So if you were a developer today and you went into contributing to one of the track tickets or hundreds of thousands of track tickets, most likely your work wouldn't see the light of day. That's 99% of the track tickets. The way I see it is like, what areas of the WordPress project, community, foundation, however you want to call this, because there's many aspects to it, right? Could we lower the bar so much that everyone can enter, everyone can get sort of a gratification feeling, like it ends in a point and you've accomplished your task, and maybe see your work live. And it's always easy to pick at these sentences, right? Again, put this hat on and think, this is the time he had to write that sentence. This is the best he could come up with. Was it perfect? Obviously not. Am I making up excuses for him? No, I'm trying to be as honest as possible. The Five for the Future program frustrates me as hell, especially because it affects my business. Can I change it? No. Will I get involved in Five for the Future just to get access to the WordPress plugin store, whatever it's going to be called? Probably not. It's easy. You don't like it, you don't contribute. It's easy. You want to contribute, you contribute without second guessing his intentions about it. That's how I see it. I'm sorry if this goes against Cameron's post. Not my intention. I haven't read his post
Not really.
fully. Oh, okay.
Broadly, I think, talking along the same lines. Cameron, I don't know if it was in your post, I can't remember now, or in Rob Howard's post, where he was talking about the expansion of things like badges, whereby there would be. So in much the same way, if you signed up to an LMS based course and you make your way through certain criteria, you get certain badges along the way. I wonder if that is a useful thing to do in the future, is to split the community at large into various different subcategories, many of which, when WordPress started, were just irrelevant because they didn't exist. So, like media, people who contribute to documentation and so on. Obviously, that's under the umbrella of, but all sorts of different things. And people who contribute in those ways and can provably say that they've done certain things should get that particular badge. I myself, for example, would get the Viking helmet badge for having created multiple blog, podcast episodes and that kind of thing. I feel, for me, that probably wouldn't make a difference. I'm not really doing it for the badges, but I could see that for some people who are starting out, those little things might make a nice and solid difference. If you could display on your WordPress.org profile that you've got, 12
There's a nuance
badges.
here as well, by the way.
Yeah, but more and more and more different ones, diverse range of different activities that you could be involved with. Let's open it up to Jess and see if she's got any thoughts.
Well, case in point, I was the co-host when this broke as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on, Jess?
I've already shared my thoughts
as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to check in the diary when you're next back on so that we can calculate to the day when the next scandal's going to break.
Oh, Lordy. Well, I've already spoken extensively on my thoughts with this, but I just want to say, I serve on the hosting team, and that's because I'm interested in hosting. Obviously, it kind of serves my purpose professionally. But, I really like the people on the team. I enjoy being a part of the conversation. I enjoy having a seat at the table. I enjoy, contributing to make things better. And by the way, our team works in coordination with a whole bunch of other teams. And I think a lot of people have thoughts on Five for the Future, and they're all valid for them, of course. But I would encourage people to just check out the teams that are available. It's easy to say, well, I just want to write blog posts and make that count. Cool. Have you ever been to a marketing team meeting? I think you might find you can contribute to that and also do what you love.
And no one says that's not a real contribution.
Yeah, of course. Just simply putting it out there that when you take Five for the Future title and all that other stuff away, what's behind it is really beautiful and amazing. And there's a lot of really, really good people that you can connect with and work together toward a greater good. And that's what I think matters more than labels, badges, and whatever other mathematical equations you want to put into the value of your time.
Yeah, I want really hard maths to be applied to this, impenetrably difficult maths, and Viking helmets. I see that as the solution.
Understandable.
Personally. Oh yeah. Honestly, why don't they all just come to me for the answers? I'll give them grains of wisdom like that. Viking helmets and impenetrably
WP Bills
hard
needs a
maths.
swag store, honestly.
Yeah, well, yeah, Viking. Yes, the Viking T-shirt.
Oh my gosh!
Dear. Yeah, I know.
I can see it.
The helmets, right?
Yeah,
Here we go.
WordPress
now got a tiara. Jess, we're going into business. We're going to launch a clothing brand with Viking helmets and tiaras. We're going to be millionaires.
And you can honestly turn this into like sort of custom emojis. And like anytime there's drama, you just add the Viking helmet or the tiara or anything else you can think of.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm going to link in the show notes to a whole bunch of other articles, which we probably don't have time to discuss here. But Cameron wanted me to highlight. I'll just put them on the screen quickly because I want to give them. Whoops, is that going to come back? Yes, because they encapsulate some of the things that Cameron wanted to talk about. This one is the WP Review article. This is Joe Casabona, and it's entitled "If You Really Want to Democratize Publishing, You Need Free Riders." So that's people who use WordPress without ever thinking about 5 for the future. And then there's 2 articles by Rob Howard. One is a slightly older one. This is back in July, entitled Toxic Scorekeeping, the case against 5 for the future. And you can imagine from the title what that goes into. And then a much more recent post, that was just this week, Saving the Future and Solving the Free Rider Problem, again over on Master WP. So that debate can be held, but I will make sure to put Cameron's post in the show notes as well. But if you go to cameronjonesweb.com.au and search for this, Why I'm Not Sold on 5 for the Future, and leave a comment there and let Cameron know what you think. Okay. I like this. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. I think this is very cool. This is Sarah Gooding writing on WP Tavern. It's called New 2023 Default Theme, now in development. We're into the latter part of 2022, so it's time to dust off and get developing a new theme. Each year we have a new one, and it drops as regular as clockwork. Now, this is going to be very, very difficult for me to describe, but it's a very different approach. Imagine basically a wireframe. In the past, we've had fairly opinionated default themes. So they've come with a set of styles, and they look the way they look, and you can go in the customizer and play with it to your heart's content and modify it. But it's bound by the choices that the designers made to a great extent. This is a really different take. And automatic director design director Channing Ritter published a piece of what the theme might look like. And I just think this is such an interesting departure from what we've normally had. So essentially, what you're presented with is a website which you could never deploy as it is. It's got placeholders for images, and they're not placeholders in the sense of, it's in a lorem ipsum type default theme of some flowers in a garden or something. It's literally a rectangle with a line drawn through it. So you can't just be away with you can't just publish it right away. And a whole load of sort of styling choices on the right-hand side in the panel. And you can change the way all of the things like the spacing and the padding and all of that works. And it just presents to me just a really different opportunity. Rather than download theme, modify, click, publish, and you're off. With this one, a little bit more thought is required. So I like it. I like the way this is heading, but I like to tinker, and I do like a blank canvas. So I don't know whether it's going to suit everybody, but it strikes me as a really, really interesting one. Let me just quickly play this video. If you're watching at the moment, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So you can see on the right, Channing is selecting different options, and you can see the padding changes, the images, the spacing between things change around, and it's just really, really different for a default WordPress theme. So over to you guys. What do you make of it?
I'd say that themes have been moving away from being opinionated designs into just being like a collection of functions that are generally applied across the entire site, like, font choice, color choice, that kind of stuff. For many years now, that's what made GeneratePress, WP Astra, Neve, and whichever other Bloxy, like the top four most popular themes. That's what made them so popular, because they stopped delivering specific designs, and they just started giving back the freedom to the user and allowing them to choose whichever page builder they wanted to complete their website design. But like, they switched from being a design framework to an utility framework, because that's basically what themes are nowadays. They bundle up a lot of utility that makes it easy to change core aspects, but not design related aspects necessarily. Those can be tweaked with skins. For example, in Bloxy, you have a lot of, which is our theme of choice right now across our entire websites. We've built our websites on Gutenberg and Bloxy. I think that's currently the best theme ever built. Sorry to everyone else, has raised the bar. And yeah, I think it's the logical, natural choice to go with this approach instead of a heavily opinionated design, which sometimes people like it, sometimes they don't, but it's sort of a very specific niche purpose, right?
Yeah,
When
I
you go
just
with something,
I was just going to say, I wonder what inexperienced WordPress users, coming into WordPress for the first time, I wonder what they would make of something like this, because it's clearly
how many
a
inexperienced
template to
users?
use,
How many
but
inexperienced users do you think WordPress still has or
yeah,
gets?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. I think a
Given that
lot would be
the
my
growth
answer.
rate, well, the
Yeah,
growth rate has plateaued and has been plateauing for like 2 years now. There's not a lot of new users stepping into this space. Like, it's growing, but not at the rate it used to be. Those new users who started 2 years ago are at least capable of changing plugins and playing around with settings and clicking stuff around to make changes.
I personally love stuff like this. It just seems like, I don't know, it's the kind of exact canvas that I would like to look at,
Yep.
because I can do whatever I want with it. But I do wonder if it's maybe a little too bare bones for other people. Anyway, over to Cameron and Jess, see what they think about this.
But they still have choices, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still
true.
have. Sorry, that was it. Everyone else, please.
Cameron?
Sure.
If not, I'll move on.
I don't have many thoughts. I don't particularly like the way full site editing has been introduced, so I'm unlikely to use this. But my only real thoughts are, it's clearly being named 2023, and I know there was some discussion recently about not doing 2020X themes,
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
having the one.
Just
So
one.
like, is this meant to be it, or is there going to be a 2024? Like, have we reached that point yet or not? Because like, obviously that is the point that full site editing is trying to get us to, is that themes are not opinionated, they're just a basic framework and your blocks are everything. So does calling it 2023 mean that we're not at that point yet, and that we're going to get a 2024, or that it'll come sometime in the future? Or is 2023 going to be the WordPress theme in for eternity?
I don't know if there's anybody who is making WordPress themes watching this at the moment or listening to it after the fact. Be curious to know what your thoughts are on that, because I do wonder, from what Cameron's just said, that message is ringing clear in my head. Some people saying, well, we just need this basic, the theme, whatever that looks like, and everything will be blocks from there on in, and you can use full site editing to modify it as you see fit. I just think the canvas, I really like it. I just like all of the icons on the right where you can fiddle, and it's really visual, but it doesn't lock you in, and you've got to have a bit of imagination to make it start. I guess the only concern that I would have is that I think for people who are not experienced with playing with page design, not just website design, but page design, it would be quite easy to come up with something extremely mediocre. based upon what you're given, because it's just this one solid color background. And I don't know.
As someone who's built custom themes in the past and sold them to clients, I can promise you, even if you give them a design, they can turn it into horrible. So don't take that away from them. We tried extensively to build themes that were, we tested with like 200 plugins to make sure that anytime they install one of those plugins, it's still going to look great, right? And they still managed to find that one plugin they could install that would fuck up the entire website and make it look like crap. But they were super happy about it. Like, everyone is a designer, they just don't know it yet.
It's bound to happen. Yeah, it's an interesting future if we do get to the point where you just drop in the theme and blocks what makes everything up. Hopefully there'll be less of what you've just described, Christian. Any thoughts on this, Jess, or should we move on?
I'm just thinking of a world where I have 3 independent sliders, each moving at different times at the top of my website.
Yep.
See how that works for my theme. Anyway, okay. Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah. Yep.
Why have 1 slider when you can have 3?
Oh, you've got to have 3 sliders, at least 3, I think,
at least
with
3.
Viking helmets. Let's move on. Okay, so we've had Vito Peleg on this podcast many times before. You may have known about him. He's behind Atarim, which is a SaaS product now, but it started out as a WordPress plugin called WP Feedback, and it allows you to essentially interact with your clients, and the clients have an interface where they can comment on things that they would like you to amend or change, or design iterations and things like that. And it's a great standalone tool. But WordPress also has a plugin called MainWP. And if you haven't used MainWP before, I really think it's a solid solution. I've got it up and running and I'm really happy with it. It's been ticking over for about 5 years with not a single problem so far. It's a solution which allows you connect it to your WordPress sites, let's typically say your clients' websites, and it allows you to log into one dashboard and update all the things. There's many more bells and whistles, but that's basically what it's intended to do. The 2 companies have got together and formed an integration, which I think is really neat, in that if you have both Atarim and MainWP, you'll be constantly logging into both of them to try and see whether there's been any activity. Do plugins need updating? That's MainWP. Has the client given us any commentary that we need to look at? That's Atarim. And whilst that's fine, if you could remove one of those steps, that would be good. And that's what this does. The idea would be that you go to your MainWP dashboard and there's now an extra bit added to the row associated with each website. And if the clients have made some commentary, so you can see on a picture here, the clients have been going around the website and they've made 12 little comments, and MainWP just now alerts you to the fact that that's happened. I'm guessing that you'll click on this icon, this button, and then you'll go to the website and you'll be logged in. You'll be able to use all of the Atarim goodness. But I just think tools like this getting together, it's not a takeover, it's just a collaboration, and it seems like a really neat one. Your thoughts?
I just want to say that I personally love MainWP, and I love the team over at Atarim. I'm very excited to see this work together, and I know that some of our customers will absolutely be excited to use it.
Yep.
Really good people all around.
Yep. And just like a really neat idea. It's not going to save you hours in a week, but it might save you hours in a year. And it's just the sort of thing that you need. If you've got a piece of software which is taking care of commentary and it can bolt into the thing which you're logging into every day. Basically, I log into MainWP every day. I don't really do the client website stuff so much anymore. But if I did, and I could just see a big blue button, and by the way, there's nothing really blue in the MainWP UI, well, unless you theme it that way, but it really would stand out. You'd be able to see it right away. Okay, something needs taken care of. It's just a nice little feature, and I wanted to give them a shout out.
Love that.
Okay. Okay, if neither of the others have got anything to say about that, shall we move on? Gutenberg 13.8. This is Sarah Gooding over on WP Tavern. Gutenberg 13.8 introduces fluid typography support and revamped quote block. I'm probably not going to touch on the quote block, but let's just all watch this video. The idea being that you'll be able to set, without doing things like media queries and what have you. The article says theme JSON already allows authors to insert their own fluid font style values. This won't change, but this PR offers it to folks who don't want to worry about it. Theme developers who want to opt into fluid typography only need to set typography.fluid to be true in the theme.json and add fluid to each of the, blah, 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 settings and so on. I just think this is really nice. It looks like a really nice implementation. The idea that you'll be able to, look at that. That just looks cool, right? Just really
sure
nice
does
to see.
One important note, though, is this is actually being built into the 2023 theme.
Oh, tell me more. What? So you'll be able to do this thing that we're watching on the screen right now, where it's shrinking and growing?
Locked and loaded, fluid
Locked and
typography.
loaded. Okay. So that's nice. Yeah. Again, it's a minor little thing, but I thought I'd mention it. Anything from anybody apart from Jess, because she's just said something.
I think nailing fluid typography is insanely difficult.
Yep.
This has existed as a CSS solution for like maybe 10 years, 12 years, more maybe. But even back then, getting fonts, headings, and sizes to scale down with their parent elements is never easy, like finding that perfect scale and balance across screen resolutions. What media queries did, though, they locked you into specific designs, right? Specific breakpoints, and someone ensured that at those specific breakpoints, you'd have, not a perfect, but an ideal experience. What fluid typography does, it adapts the entire layout across all the possible breakpoints. So you're never going to get the same experience with this website. So interesting, but I can only see it working in very simple use cases, such as a very minimalistic typography-based blog or publication, news websites, stuff like that. It's extremely challenging to get fluid typography working on a real website. When I'm saying real website, I'm thinking about one with sliders, with 3 sliders, with contact pages and exactly. So if you can for a second, just imagine in an e-commerce store with a lot of traffic that implements this. It's not going to be not challenging.
I basically look at the web. I'm just trying to think to myself, what are the varieties of different screen sizes that I use? And basically, I'm bound to 2 different things. I'm on this computer.
No, you are, because you don't realize how many knockoff cheap devices there are on the planet, and coming from China mainly, and they have these weird ass resolutions. Because we've built an image gallery plugin, we get requests such as on our support channels. We get people saying, I just put your gallery up on my whatever brand name TV they got there, and it has this 594 pixels by, I don't know, 594. So imagine it's a square.
It's a square. Okay, it's a square.
I don't know.
Screen.
I just
all right.
but it varies so much. It's insane, and
that is interesting.
It doesn't look perfect, and I'm like, hold on. So what do I have to do now? Should I fly to China, buy one of these TVs, like buy a new apartment, furnish it just with TVs from floor to ceiling, because there's so many brands and so many different resolutions, and they're constantly being updated. What do I do now?
Yeah, that's
and so many different browsers as well. Because phones
You're right. I'm either looking at it like that on my phone, never like that. I've given up holding. Like, does anybody browse the web that way on their phone? When did that
lot
start?
of people
Only videos.
Oh, video. Yeah, that's the only case, right? You click the little enlarge button and it's a video.
Sometimes text. Sometimes text.
Oh, really? Like that? Oh no, never.
Well,
no,
if the page is not responsive, or if an email is going over the margins.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. So I'm basically two resolutions. That's all I kind of need to think about me.
It's just
this
you.
monitor. Yeah, exactly. And this phone that way round, orientated for text. But you're
So
right. I hadn't really given enough
remember
thought
that
to the
apps on your
multitude
phone
of different
have
sizes. Yeah, that's
built-in
fascinating.
browsers as well. So Instagram,
Yep.
Facebook, anytime you open a link, they're going to default, especially on iPhones. This is different on Android, but on iPhone, it just has a built-in browser, which is, way dumber than the one you have on your phone. So that's going to be it's going to react entirely different, with fluid typography and fluid everything. So it's going to break stuff easily,
Yeah.
and you're going to be left with, hold on, so how do I even test this out? How do I even reproduce this on my end to see why it's happening?
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. That was very informed. Thank you, Christian. And took that debate on. Cameron, anything to say about that, or shall we move on?
Oh, not really.
Okay.
But yeah, it's hard.
It's hard.
Typography, fluid typography is hard.
Yeah, getting it perfect for everything.
It will be interesting to see how they've implemented this and see how it works.
Yeah, when you see that video, and it's obvious there's a lot of thought been done into making that particular scenario work very, very well. It looks really nice, doesn't it? It's ever so appealing. As you shrink it, it just changes a lot of times, and it looks perfect in all scenarios. But like you say, trying to accommodate the 4,000 different screen resolutions out there, yeah, a heck of a challenge. Right, so a new beachhead so this is where the new YouTube channel courses are going to come out, aren't they? The how to do fluid typography in 3 easy stages.
It makes sense, but the use cases are pretty limited.
Yeah. Okay, right. It is time to do some back patting. Jessica is going to not only wear her Viking helmet, she's going to get a large paddle out and just pat herself on the back because
Hang on.
this.
No, I got a flag for this one.
She's got a flag now. It's just the best. Can I just tell you a story, right? This has got nothing to do with WordPress. When I was 21 years old, I went to a party in London, and this guy showed up that nobody knew. Like, nobody could figure out how he'd got there. And he was wearing an enormous trench coat, and it went from shoulder to the floor. And it turned out, like, as the evening went on, turned out this guy had everything inside his coat. Literally everything. He'd sewn custom pockets throughout the entire internals, including behind his back. And it got to the point where I said to him, because it was getting ridiculous, people saying, have you got a sewing kit? And he'd rummage around it. Yeah, I got a sewing kit. I said to him, have you got a chicken baster? He had a chicken baster. He had a thing to baste oil onto a chicken. He had a small chicken baster. And Jess, what I'm feeling is that you have fast become that guy on this podcast episode. You've got all the things. Look at you with your array of things in the background.
You know what, though? I keep this here because we do a lot of Zoom calls, and some people are killing it, and they need to know that.
Okay, that's what it is, killing it. But look at Cameron, very minimal. Look at Christian, very minimal. Me, I've got a few bits of paper, but it's very minimal. You got all the stuff going on. I've
got stuff all over the place, but you know what? That's just how my brain works. I know where it all is.
Jess, do you have a chicken baster?
Not in this room.
Oh, it's such a disappointment.
But I have two sizes in another room.
I don't know if you can come back. Oh, wait, okay, that's fine. You got them in another room. That's fine. Anyway, there's the chicken baster. That is the strong contender for the episode title. Chicken baster.
Gosh, I need to go to parties with you, Nathan.
Well, honestly, it was so strange. It was literally, we were all wetting ourselves with laughter as people said more and more curious and weird things, and he had them. It was very odd. Anyway, right. So what are we looking at? What are we looking at, Jess?
Well, we were going to talk about this on the last episode. We ran out of time. And, obviously Pressable did well here, but the cool thing about Review Signal, this is something that is done every year by a guy named Kevin Ohashi, and he does this with zero influence. You do have to pay to participate because those hosting companies will pay him for his time. There is no way to get an edge on this. Everyone runs through the same tests. And basically, this is an annual performance test to show you how each host that participates is performing that year. So for example, right now you're looking at WordPress hosting companies, and these are people who submitted for the under $25 category. Each of those dollar amounts are different amounts for each plan. So, you know, plans that are between $51 and $100 and so forth. And different hosts will participate in different levels depending on what plans they want to put in. So obviously the sub 25, there's a bunch of them. Those that performed well have stars next to their name. Those that performed do not. You'll see that there's obviously highlights in every single area. In this one, there were a lot of heavy hitters for the sub $25. The higher you go, the less you're going to see. Obviously, Pressable got stars in every category. But the real story here, and this is something that Kevin specifically spoke about, if you look at our best performers from the test last year, and not our Pressable, but our the community. If you look at our top performers from last year, there would be on the lower level this year, because every host across the board is just killing it now.
Huh.
Hosts are becoming faster than they've ever been before. And it's really quite amazing to look at year over year. So I don't know if you're the technical type, but if you are, you can look into each of these individual hosts, click any random one. It doesn't have to be mine.
Well, why not? Let's do yours because you're here.
Okay.
So if we click into the Pressable one, here we go.
You scroll down and you can see kind of how we performed year over year. But if you go further, they'll see the load storm. And this is kind of where Kevin does his real data analysis, and he's running load tests. He's using specific software to see how the host performs under a lot of traffic with a lot of people doing a lot of different processes. And that's kind of where he gives you back these scores. And it's really interesting from a hosting perspective to kind of see where you have room to grow, not only just in comparison to others, but just against what you think you should be doing. But it's also just a nice way to kind of celebrate how far you've come. I know there are some hosts that got stars this year that didn't get them last year. And I think that by and large, they'd probably say that they were influenced by the feedback that they got the year before. So when you're out shopping for a host and they tell you they're the fastest, I would encourage you to come to WP Hosting Benchmarks and look at Kevin's data, and he'll tell you who really was. Now, that said, different hosts will have different speeds. Obviously, if you have a site with nothing on it, you could be a whole lot faster than a site running 3 sliders. There's always nuance. But generally speaking, I think that Kevin's data is a really good rule of thumb. You'll see there are a lot of hosts that don't participate. And that's a conversation for another day. I have my thoughts on why they probably don't, but I think there's a really good array of hosts here. And I think it actually helps further the entire WordPress community by participating, because we can all see kind of what's working best for everybody else.
Do you know, I didn't know that first of all, that there was a fee, and I can quite understand that there's a fee because he's basically putting probably an awful lot of time in, and the level of detail that would go into this would be simply unachievable by a voluntary thing. So did you say his name was Kevin?
It is.
So Kevin, cool gig. What a nice thing to be doing. If you're really into the data and the nerdiness of inspecting what WordPress hosts are like, it's great that you've managed to forge a life for yourself where that's what you're doing. But also, this is the perennial question, isn't it, in Facebook groups and so on, especially with people who are dissatisfied with their current host. They just want one place to give them some kind of an authority. And whilst you say not everybody's here, it's a good place to begin that journey, isn't it? It gives you some key pointers right off the bat. And I would imagine that most people are not really going to delve into the statistics too deeply. But if you are that person and you're looking to make a change, this is a good place to start. So it's WPHostingBenchmarks.com. Very cool. Yeah, nice. And you're happy with the way it turned out for Pressable this year, right?
I am. Like you said, not everybody's going to go here, but we are really doing our best to reach more developers and agencies. We think we are very well suited for that audience. And I think most agencies and developers do care about their performance. So
yeah.
I'm very happy to see us perform well in this specifically.
Yeah, there must be a little bit of nail biting when Kevin comes back and drops that bomb, drops the Kevin bomb, and you don't get the star this year. But
Having
well done.
worked for a few hosts, yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking. You're refreshing until the results are posted.
Kevin, nice. Like I say, nice gig. That's great. Cameron and Christian, I know that time is short, so if you've got nothing to say on that, we'll move on, if that's all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Let me just quickly nip to this one. We had the guys on from North Commerce. If you don't know about North Commerce, they're in kind of like beta, maybe still even alpha. I'm not sure. It's a platform which they're hoping to rival WooCommerce. It's called North Commerce, and I just thought I'd introduce this video. It's on YouTube. It's called North Commerce Update Plugin Security. And if you're curious about changing away from WooCommerce or trying a different e-commerce solution built inside of WordPress, you might be interested to know about some of the bits and pieces that they're doing to ensure that your transactions are not being inspected as it travels across the wire and and secure. Boy, that went right through me.
God bless you, Cameron.
Yeah, Cameron just did the big sneeze. Okay, WordCamp US. They have their speaker lineup available now. If you were lucky enough to get a ticket, then this is an article on WP Tavern, but basically you can now go and see. They released it over a number of rounds. They did like a blog post each and every day for like a week or something. And you can go and check it out now and see what the schedule is like. And obviously, if you are going, it's from I'm going to get the dates wrong. I can't remember. I think it's the 6th to the 9th, or maybe it's the
9 to
9th
11.
to the 11th. Yeah, 9th to the 11th of September. And if you are going, I'll see you there because I'm going now, which is going to be kind of cool. Yeah, I'll talk more about it later, but I'm delighted. Some sort of incredible.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy right now.
I'll tell you the story when we've finished, and I'll tell everybody else the story at some point. But just the weirdest thing. But I am going to be there, which is really nice. So if you're into attending that WordCamp, the important thing is if you didn't make it, there will be a live stream available. So you'll be able to see the whole entire thing. I wanted to mention that I did a podcast episode this week with Ritis Chevelis from Visual Composer. And whilst he is a employee of Visual Composer, it's not particularly about that. It's all about selling to your WordPress clients the fact that you are using a page builder, not as something that you need to be ashamed of, but as something that, in his words, you kind of ought to be proud of because it's going to save you a whole bunch of time. And Cameron, was it this one that you wanted me to mention, or was it the other one?
Oh, perhaps.
Was it this one? Yeah, you're nodding. I think so. Right, I confess, I read this a few days ago, and Cameron, if you're prepared to wing it, tell us what this one's about, because I read it, and for some reason, anything that I read got pushed out of my brain during the weekend, and I can't remember what it's about. It's called New Proposal Calls for Contributors to Stop Merging Experimental APIs from Gutenberg to WordPress Core. What are the talking points in here?
Well, in WordPress Core, in 6.0 or whatever the current version is, I can't remember, there are about 300 APIs as part of Gutenberg that are marked as experimental and shouldn't be used. Unfortunately, when you put something into Core, people are going to use it because it's there. And especially when you have a beta testing plugin called Gutenberg that you should be doing all the experimental API stuff in. When you put those experimental APIs in Core when they're not stable, by putting them in Core, you're almost endorsing them as stable when they're not. And so people use them, things break, and it's not a good time for anyone. So I think it is about time this happened.
I'm obviously not committing to Core or anything like that, but there's no way of sort of expunging these, or they haven't been expunged over time, or they just slip through a net, or how does that even happen?
Well, they don't really slip through a net because they have to be explicitly copied over from the plugin into Core. I don't know exactly how they get in there. Like, obviously, these are all features that probably should be in core at some point, whether it's just implemented in the best way. Whether it's because the people who are working on 2023 theme are like, hi, I need this feature. Can we make sure it's available so that when people install the theme, they don't need the plugin for it to work?
Yeah.
Maybe it's something like that. I'm not sure. But, if it was a couple that had come in, we'd say, okay, sure. But 300 APIs is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot, doesn't it? And presumably then there's no sort of particular security threat here. It's just a quirky amount of things in there that probably ought to be just in, as you say, the beta testing plugin where they belong until further notice. Unfortunately, time is our enemy today. I've got a hard stop in about 90 seconds, so we are going to have to wrap it up there. There's a couple of articles that we never got to, I'm afraid. Might just push those on to next week. But I think we're going to go with the chicken baster title for this particular episode. Christian has joined us purely for this bit. Christian's hands are so ready. He's been like, like,
I've been warming them up. Yeah.
We haven't seen his hands during this whole episode. He's been getting them ready. He's had them in like bowls of water to make them look perfect. He's been moisturizing during the week.
Absolutely.
Because it's that humiliating bit at the end of the show where we all raise our hands and we wave simultaneously, and then we're going to use this as the album. Look, Cameron's got a hand missing. He's got a microphone. Where's it going to go? Okay, and look at Christian's hands, the best hands. I think.
Thank you for noticing.
We'll be back.
Thank you.
I say we'll be back next week. I should be back next week if the stars align. It should be. I can't remember off the top of my head who's on, but I would like to sincerely thank Cameron for joining us today and staying up by what is now probably close to midnight. I apologise, Cameron.
Just at midnight.
I don't know how you maintain cogentness at that time of day. I'd also like to thank Christian Raber for joining us from WP Chill, and also Jess Frick for joining us from Pressable. Thank you so much. Your participation makes it all worthwhile, and thank you for the commentary that's come in this week. I really appreciate you guys as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hit the end stream, and I will see you next week.